I never thought a simple wrong turn could change everything. One moment, I was just driving down a quiet highway, following the GPS like any other day. The next, I found myself staring down a dusty road that didn't look familiar, like it led to nowhere. The kind of place you don't expect to see on any map. I hesitated. But curiosity got the better of me. I turned down that road. The sun was dipping low, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch and twist with a life of their own. The air grew colder, heavier, as if I'd crossed some invisible line. That's when I first noticed it, how silent everything was. No birds chirping, no rustling leaves, not even the distant hum of a car. Just this unsettling, thick silence pressing against me. I pulled up to what looked like the edge of a town. Or at least, what used to be one. Empty streets stretched out in front of me, lined with crumbling buildings and faded signs swinging gently in the breeze. The kind of place where time had stopped, or maybe never moved forward at all. The closer I got, the more I realized something was very wrong. There wasn't a single soul around. No cars, no people, no pets. Nothing alive. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I parked the car and stepped outside, the gravel crunching under my feet breaking the silence like a loud shout in a quiet room. Every step echoed, but no answer came back. What was this place? How had I ended up here? And more importantly, was I really alone? I should have turned back the moment I saw the empty streets. But something deeper, something darker, pulled me in. A whisper in the wind, a shadow moving just beyond my sight. Something that made my skin crawl but refused to let me leave. That's when the real nightmare began. The moment I stepped further into the ghost town, the weight of the silence pressed down harder. Every crack in the pavement, every broken window, told a story, but one I wasn't sure I wanted to hear. The buildings leaned like tired old men, their paint peeling and walls crumbling, as if they were barely holding on to the memories of life that once filled them. I started walking down the main street, the only sound was my footsteps and the faint whistle of the wind weaving through empty storefronts. Signs swung loosely on rusted chains, creaking like slow sighs from some forgotten past. One sign caught my eye. It was for a general store, the letters faded almost to nothing, but the shape of a bottle and a loaf of bread was still clear. Pushing open the door, I stepped inside. Dust floated in the thin shafts of fading sunlight sneaking through cracked windows. Shelves stood empty, save for a few scattered cans long past their expiration date. I could almost imagine the voices that once filled this place, the laughter, the everyday chatter, but now, only silence remained. Outside, the shadows seemed to stretch longer with every passing second. The air grew heavier and colder, and a shiver ran down my spine. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just my imagination playing tricks in this forgotten place. But something was off. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was waiting. Watching. As I moved further down the street, I noticed small details that didn't make sense. A chair knocked over as if someone had left in a hurry. A door left ajar, swaying gently without wind. And footprints, barely visible in the dusty dirt, leading deeper into the town. My heart pounded harder. Was someone else here? Or had I imagined the tracks? I followed them, curiosity battling with rising fear. The footprints led to what looked like an old town hall. Its grand doors were cracked and splintered, but somehow still imposing. I hesitated before pushing it open, the heavy wood groaning loudly, breaking the fragile silence. Inside, the air was colder still, biting at my skin like icy fingers. The floorboards creaked beneath me, and the faint smell of something metallic lingered in the air, like rusted blood. My eyes scanned the dark corners, searching for any sign of life, but only shadows greeted me. Then, I heard it, a faint whisper, barely audible but unmistakable. It sounded like someone calling my name, soft and distant. I froze. "Hello?" I whispered back, my voice trembling. Silence answered. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I couldn't move. My feet felt glued to the floor. That's when I noticed the walls, scrawled with strange symbols and faded writing, almost like warnings. The letters were jagged and uneven, carved into the wood with a frantic desperation. I reached out, tracing one of the symbols with my finger. A cold chill shot through me, and for a brief moment, I felt like the room was closing in. The whisper returned, closer this time, more urgent, almost pleading. I backed away, heart racing, and stumbled out of the town hall into the dying light. The sun was almost gone, leaving long, dark shadows that seemed to move on their own. I glanced back once more and saw, in the dim light, a figure standing just inside the doorway. But when I blinked, it was gone. My breath hitched, and a cold sweat broke out. I was not alone here. Something was watching, waiting. But what? And why? I knew I needed to keep moving, to find a way out before the darkness swallowed everything. But the town wasn't ready to let me leave, not yet. The sun finally disappeared behind the horizon, leaving me swallowed by the deepening darkness. The ghost town was no longer just an empty shell, it felt alive, like a breathless trap waiting to close. My eyes strained to see beyond the faint glow of my phone's flashlight, revealing only broken signs, shattered windows, and creeping shadows that twisted into shapes I didn't want to imagine. I kept moving, my footsteps slower now, more cautious. Every creak and distant clang made my heart leap. Then, I heard it, a faint shuffle behind me. I froze, holding my breath, straining to listen. Nothing but silence. I told myself it was probably a stray animal, or maybe just the wind playing tricks. But the feeling of being watched didn't leave. It grew heavier, pressing against my skin like invisible fingers. I swallowed hard and decided to find somewhere to rest, hoping I'd get my bearings by morning. That's when I saw it, a dim light flickering from inside a nearby building. Curiosity fought with my better judgment. The building looked like an old diner, the paint chipped and glass cracked, but that faint glow called out. I approached slowly, every nerve screaming. Inside, the flickering light came from a single candle on a rickety table. The room smelled of dust and something else, something faintly metallic, like blood or rust. The chairs were overturned, and old menus littered the floor, but the candle burned steadily, as if someone had just been here. Then, I heard the whisper again. Not from the shadows this time, but right next to me. Soft, low, almost like a breath, "Don't stay." I spun around. No one. The room was empty except for the candle's flickering flame. I tried to steady my breath. "Who's there?" I called, voice cracking. No answer. Suddenly, the candle went out, plunging me into darkness. I fumbled for my phone, the screen lighting up to reveal a figure standing just beyond the doorway, a silhouette too tall and thin to be human. I blinked, and it vanished. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. Panic bubbled under my skin, but I forced myself to stay calm. Maybe I was losing it. Maybe the isolation and silence were breaking my mind. But then I found something, scratched into the wooden wall near the table, words. Faint, desperate, leave now before it finds you. My skin crawled. I didn't want to believe it, but I knew I had to get out. Something in this town didn't want me here. Something old and angry. I hurried back outside, but as I stepped into the street, the temperature dropped sharply. My breath came out in clouds, and a cold wind whispered through the empty streets, carrying faint laughter, childlike, eerie, and cruel. I didn't know where to go. Every path seemed darker, every shadow deeper. The footsteps I'd seen earlier had returned, now surrounding me from all sides. But when I turned, nothing was there. I was trapped. The cold night wrapped around me like a shroud, suffocating and endless. I kept moving, but every step felt heavier, as if the town itself was trying to hold me back. The shadows seemed to shift and breathe, stretching longer and darker with every heartbeat. Then, I realized something terrifying. The streets I had walked earlier, the paths I thought I knew, they no longer led anywhere familiar. Every turn I took brought me back to the same empty square, like the town was a maze designed to trap me. Panic clawed at my chest. I was caught in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I tried the car again, hoping to escape this madness. But the keys wouldn't fit the ignition. The doors wouldn't unlock. It was like the car itself had become a cage, mocking me. My phone's signal was gone. No GPS, no calls, no messages. I was utterly alone, trapped in this ghost town with something unseen hunting me. The wind picked up, carrying faint whispers that tangled with my thoughts. They weren't words I could understand, more like half-formed syllables, carried just beyond comprehension. Then came the footsteps, close, steady, circling me in the darkness. I spun around, searching for their source. Shadows flickered just out of reach. Then a flicker of movement, a pale face, eyes black and empty, staring from a broken window. I blinked, and it was gone. A cold dread settled deep in my bones. I wasn't just being watched, I was being hunted. I ran, heart pounding, lungs burning. Every alley looked the same, every doorway a shadow trap. I could hear the laughter again, soft, cruel, echoing in the silence like a cruel game. I stumbled into an old church at the edge of town. The doors creaked open as if inviting me inside. The inside was worse, pews broken and overturned, walls stained with strange symbols that glowed faintly in the moonlight. And in the center, a circle of candles flickered despite the cold wind outside. In the middle of the circle lay a dusty journal, its pages yellowed and brittle. With shaking hands, I opened it. The writing was frantic, filled with warnings and dark tales of this town's curse, a place abandoned after a tragedy so terrible it had cursed the land itself. The author spoke of restless spirits, of a darkness that fed on fear and trapped souls forever. I slammed the journal shut. I had to get out. But as I turned to leave, the doors slammed shut behind me. The temperature dropped further, breath frosting in the air. And then I heard it, right behind me, a slow, heavy breathing, cold and ragged. I wasn't alone. The cold breath behind me was the last thing I remember before everything went black. When I came to, I was lying on the cracked floor of the church, the journal still open beside me. The heavy silence had returned, but something felt different, as if the air itself was charged with a dreadful weight. I forced myself to sit up and flip through the journal again, desperate to understand what I had stumbled into. The entries told a grim story. The town, once called Raven's Hollow, had been abandoned decades ago after a series of mysterious disappearances. People vanished without a trace, leaving their homes and lives behind as if something had driven them away in terror. One entry described an old legend, the Watcher, a dark entity that fed on fear and trapped souls in the town forever. It was said the Watcher appeared to those who entered, whispering warnings before drawing them into the shadows. The townsfolk had tried to fight it, but one by one, they disappeared, leaving only silence behind. As I read, a cold realization settled in. This was no ordinary ghost story. The Watcher was real, and I had crossed its path. Suddenly, a noise shattered the silence, a low, guttural growl echoing through the church. The candles flickered wildly, casting grotesque shadows on the walls. I scrambled to my feet, clutching the journal like a lifeline. The door to the church slammed open, and the darkness outside poured in like ink. I could see movement, shapes shifting at the edges of the light. Then, from the shadows, a figure emerged. Taller than any man, with eyes like burning coals and a presence that sucked the warmth from the air. The Watcher. It moved slowly, deliberately, its gaze locked on me. Every instinct screamed to run, but my legs refused to move. The journal slipped from my hands as the creature closed in, whispering in a voice that scraped across my mind like nails on a chalkboard. Leave. Or stay, forever. I stumbled backward, heart hammering. There was no escape. The town had claimed me. But then, something unexpected happened. A sudden surge of courage welled up inside me, fueled by desperation and fear. I grabbed the journal, scanning the pages for anything, any clue, any way out. There, at the back, was a ritual. A way to banish the Watcher, if only for a moment. It required lighting the candles in a specific order and speaking words I barely understood. My hands shook as I gathered the candles, setting them up in the circle again. The Watcher's growls grew louder, the air thick with menace. With a trembling voice, I recited the words. The flames flickered higher, casting strange patterns on the walls. For a moment, the Watcher faltered, its form shimmering and wavering like smoke in the wind. Then, with a piercing scream that shook the very ground, it vanished, leaving behind only silence. Exhausted and shaken, I collapsed to the floor. The dawn was breaking outside, casting pale light through the broken windows. I was still alive. But the town's curse was real, and I knew this wasn't over. I didn't wait to see if the Watcher would return. I scrambled to my feet and dashed toward the church doors, throwing them open wide. Outside, the morning fog clung thick to the empty streets, swirling around broken signs and cracked pavement like ghosts themselves. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure the whole town could hear it. I ran. Every shadow seemed to reach out for me, every creak and whisper chasing my steps. The air grew colder with every breath, and the silence was shattered only by the pounding of my feet on the gravel. I didn't look back. I just ran faster, desperate to escape whatever force held this place captive. The streets twisted in impossible ways, as if the town was shifting beneath my feet. Buildings loomed closer, shadows stretched longer, and the fog thickened, wrapping around me like chains. I stumbled, nearly falling, but I kept going. Ahead, I spotted my car, the only sign of the world I'd left behind. Relief surged through me like a wave. But as I reached for the door handle, a cold hand shot out of the fog, grabbing my wrist with a grip like iron. I screamed, twisting to break free, but the grip tightened. The fog around me thickened, and the shadows coalesced into the Watcher's shape, tall, dark, with eyes burning like hellfire. Leave now, it hissed, voice like cracked glass. I yanked my arm free and slammed the door shut, locking it tight. My hands trembled as I fumbled with the ignition. The engine roared to life, but the tires spun in place, stuck in the gravel. The Watcher loomed closer, its shadow stretching over the car like a dark cloud. I slammed my foot on the gas, tires screeching, and finally the car lurched forward, tearing through the fog and back onto the highway. As the ghost town disappeared in my rearview mirror, the sun broke through the clouds, warm and bright. I was free. Or so I thought. Driving away from that cursed place, my hands still trembled on the wheel. The sun was rising, but the weight of what I'd experienced pressed down like a shadow I couldn't shake. I told myself it was over. That I'd escaped the ghost town and its nightmare. But deep down, I knew the Watcher was still out there, waiting for the next lost soul to wander into its trap. Sometimes, late at night, I swear I can still hear those whispers. The faint laughter carried on the wind. And the cold breath of the darkness that almost swallowed me whole. If there's one thing I learned from that night, it's this: some wrong turns don't just get you lost, they change your life forever. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and like the video. There's plenty more where this came from, and you don't want to miss what's next.